What's going on, everybody? Canuck here, and I am back home after an incredible few days in Scottsdale where I got to attend the Waste Management Phoenix Open and play the full build of PGA Tour 2K25. So first off, a huge thank you to 2K for inviting me to this event and letting me be one of the first in the world to play the full version of this game. During our playtest, we had about 2.5 hours to explore the entire game. Nothing was off limits, devs were available for questions, and while I did spend some time checking out things like career mode and my player, obviously I spent the majority of my time checking out the designer, pouring through the menus to see what was new and what designers had to look forward to for this new iteration of the game. I was very excited to see that there were some significant changes made to the designer that are going to make creating courses easier, as well as push our limits of creativity with a variety of new tools and options that are going to bring endless variety to our courses. Now, before we get started, if you're looking for PGA Tour 2K25 content, particularly centered around course design, I've got plenty of videos coming, as well as tutorials that will go more in depth with some of these new tools and features, so please make sure to like and subscribe. Now, during this playtest, I tried to highlight everything I could, but I'm sure I missed a few things. I didn't get time to pour over everything, but I did my very best. If there's something I didn't cover in this video, please feel free to post your questions in the comments below. I will do my very best to try to answer them based on what I saw. So let's jump in with some of the big new additions I saw, and then we'll wrap the video with my initial thoughts about the course design tool in general. Let's get going. Absolutely the biggest new feature in the designer is the terrain painting tool. What makes it so incredible is how you can now brush and spline a variety of different textures throughout your plot to create near limitless looks. You can also alter the intensity of each texture as well to make each look as bold or as subtle as you like. So the terrain painting is broken down into 4 parts, and these 4 parts can all be mixed together to create millions of different possibilities, and you can also lay down each layer with a brush or a spline individually as well. So the top layer is the grass or topsoil layer. When I played around with this a little bit, I found it a little bit tricky to figure out. Essentially, it sort of acts as a second shade of heavy rough. I did notice some texture selections had some drastic effects, while others didn't really seem to do much of anything. It's definitely something I'm going to have to fiddle with when I get my hands on it again, but when you do lay down or choose a different texture from grass and topsoil, it will most likely have the most drastic effect on the overall look of your plot, depending on which texture you use. The next layer down is the Subsoil A layer, and I think the Subsoil A layer is going to be used a lot for natural waste areas and sand dunes, so you can actually create these without actually using bunkers, which we had to do back in 2K23. So in this shot here, I was kind of fiddling around, making a waste area, and then I decided to play test it, and I was really impressed to see that being on the sand dune, actually, the lie was sand, which is awesome. So now you can create courses with these epic sand dunes. You can go without actually putting any bunkers at all on the course. A great example of some of these sand dunes and the use of this in action is Huntington Sound, which is one of the official courses in 2K25, which looks absolutely incredible. Now, Subsoil B, I didn't play with a lot. It didn't seem to have too many effects, but I did notice one important effect as it did appear to change the texture of the lips of the bunkers. And the final layer down was the Bedrock layer. It has some great textures with loads of detail, so you can actually just paint on cliff sides. You can sculpt rocks out of land by just painting it with bedrock. This is going to save tons of plant meter. You don't actually have to plant any rocks at all. You can just paint them all on. I cannot wait to see what people can do with this tool. I think a lot of people are going to find it a bit overwhelming, and I would guess that you kind of have to lock into a set of textures before you get too far in designing your course, but we'll see how designers use this tool once they get their hands on it. My next favorite new addition is the surface weathering. This works similar to terrain painting, as you can both spline and brush on different textures to create a sort of weathering effect. So you can create areas of brown or dried out spots all over your course and on all different textures, greens, heavy rough, fairway. And if you actually happen to weather in an area where you've laid down some new fescue, which we'll talk about in a second, it actually browns part of the fescue out, which creates a great look. And you can actually see this in this shot from Yoho River. You see a lot of that fescue on the right and that surface weathering used really, really well. So let's talk about these fescue assets. We have some amazing new grass assets in the form of this long fescue. There are lots of options and different levels of wispiness, I guess I'm going to say. And again, the ability to brown it with the surface weathering is just awesome. There's also huge improvement in terms of other nature assets with lots of new and improved models of trees, rocks, and plants. Some of these bushes I was scrolling through are really nice and add some color. There's some great options for heather, which you can see here, and some of these new bushes I really see some really good potential with. Let's talk bunkers. Bunkers are excellent this year, but we do have to get something out of the way, and I do think this is something that a lot of people are going to consider a big disappointment. Proper pot bunkers are still not a part of the course designer. However, I did ask the devs directly during the playtest, and the answer I got was St. Andrews is coming in Season 2, and they just kind of left it there. That brings me some optimism that maybe something is in development, but there was no definitive answer, but I am hopeful. So with the bunkers, this new high-res terrain model allows for some really dramatic looking bunker sculpting, especially with shadows around the lips. They look absolutely stunning. New this year is the ability to use these high-resolution bunkers and change various settings like depth of the base as well as depth of the lip. You can change where the bunker lip starts as well as how steep it is. Now, these are global settings, so you can't change them for each individual bunker, but it's going to make sculpting the inside of the bunker so much easier. I mean, you don't even really have to do it much anymore. Now, I did notice in the menus that it said the high-res bunkers cost memory, apparently. I didn't really get time to test it, how much that actually does. It seems rather minimal. I didn't notice the memory meter jump at all when I laid down a bunker, but not quite sure what that means in terms of memory. Another great tool for maximizing efficiency with your workflow in the designer are these new filters. You can use them when searching for assets to make it easier to find what you need instead of flipping through extensive pages of trees, for example. But where the filters really shine is that you can choose to show, hide, or lock different textures, assets, measurements, waypoints, and even automated object clearing. So I can see this coming in handy if you wanted to maybe delete a large cluster of grasses, for example, but maybe they're really close to a fairway that, you know, if you use that area select tool, you don't want to actually select it. So you can actually lock the fairway in place and use the area select tool to just select what you want and get rid of it. I think it's going to take a little bit of practice for people to get the hang of, but I was starting to get the hang of it pretty quickly as I was exploring the filters. I honestly think this is an underrated feature that's going to make the process of design and editing our work easier and quicker, and I think might be a favorite new addition amongst more experienced designers. All right, let's talk themes a little bit. Even though themes don't matter too much anymore, especially now with this new terrain painting, we do have a new one, the temperate theme. Now, what's cool about the temperate theme is along with the Highlands theme, it now comes with that fescue that's auto-generated instead of the default grasses. So this is going to allow you to have fescue down without it actually taking up plant meter, and you can just delete where you need to, which is awesome. We also have some new backdrops, and not just in a couple themes, in every theme. Every theme has at least 6 backdrops in total, and at least one theme with water like a lake or an ocean incorporated in them. They've gotten a nice graphical overhaul, and honestly, they look really, really good. Okay, water. And this is a very significant change. How we lay down and create water is now completely different. Water planes are a thing of the past. You can now do it completely with splines. Now, I didn't play with the water tool too much, but I did notice you do need to do some sculpting around your water source to get the results you want. You just can't, it's not like you can just spline a lake and it'll put in this perfect lake. You do have to do some sculpting to get the look that you want. And rivers and streams are just essentially a spline now, and you can make them flow downhill, which is great. So no more stacking water planes to get that downhill look. This is a welcome addition, especially for me, someone who does not like to build streams that flow essentially downhill. Oh, also speaking of splines, I did quickly notice that you can spline out of bounds now, which is something that I know a lot of designers have been asking for. Lighting also seems to have improved quite a bit. Back in 2K23, a lot of designers were resorting to kind of creating cloudy courses only because if the light was bright or the sun was facing you, the trees really appeared to be shiny. That seems to have disappeared now, and the low lighting and shadows look really, really good. And the draw distance on the trees also looks great. Another thing I found is we now have the ability to put down course marshals. I think this is great and helps enhance the tournament atmosphere, if that's what you're hoping to achieve. Now, I was struggling to get them to actually appear when I was playtesting. I did flag the devs down and they were going to look into it. I wasn't sure if I was doing it wrong or not. Hopefully it's going to be fixed, or maybe I just did it wrong and I got to figure it out before launch. Now, near the end of the stream, I did play around with the extensive new replay system when I was playing a couple rounds. I'm sure those that have played the demo at this point might see how this can relate to the designer, especially for those console designers, because now you can essentially fly around the course without any UI. I'm hoping this might help console designers that want to take really clean, good-looking screenshots of their course. The last big new thing I played with was the extensive camera system that will let designers create flyovers and creative shots of their courses that will show up when players play them. These are going to be a lot of fun to use and will add a whole new realm of creativity. The camera system, though, is completely optional and doesn't have to be used. So in terms of what you can create with this camera system, you can essentially create 4 different shots. You can create an event intro shot, which will play at the beginning of a tournament that gets hosted, like a society event, for example. You can create menu background shots, so when you pause the game. And then you can create what are called these lower third shots, which was explained to me as the camera that shows kind of between the holes when the scorecard is kind of in the lower third of the screen. And then you can create whole intro shots, which are essentially specialized lower third cameras to highlight specific holes. Now, with the latter two, it seems like you can create multiple different camera sequences. I have no idea what the limit is, but I imagine you can create them for 1 or 2 for every hole, but I don't know what the limit to camera creation is. Now, I didn't play with it too long, but the camera system does seem quite complex. There are a lot of different settings you can tweak to create exactly what you want. The advanced camera settings get even more confusing, that contain some words I don't even know what they mean. I'm sure we will get more of a grasp on this post-release, but I can see a ton of potential here, especially with kind of slow panning shots between holes. I think that's kind of what you want to go for. A couple smaller things that I asked about but didn't actually record too much of at all during the playtest is tee widths can now be adjusted. You can have really wide tees. You can also have very narrow tees. And divots now only appear on tee boxes under a certain length, which is much more realistic and actually more show up the closer the tee is to the hole. So no more big divots on par 4s and par 5s, which is a nice little realistic touch that was long overdue. And I also noticed that the Spline Tool is slightly different, and it has more of a rounded edge surrounded by a straight edge. So from my understanding, the straight edge kind of acts as a reference to tell you where the edge of the spline is. and you can use that to match up edges for surface transitions, and the curved edge shows what the spline is going to look like once it's placed down. I did find that splining felt a lot more precise than it did in 2K23, which I think is great. And we can't finish this video without talking about the absolutely massive upgrade to the graphics compared to PGA Tour 2K23. The move to next gen, or I guess current gen, has made the game look crisper and significantly more detailed. But the true star of the show is the golf courses. From the individual blades of grass to the sand grains to rocky cliffs, everything just looks so good. And as you can see with a few of these comparisons between 2K23 versus 2K25, some of the official courses on there, the differences are night and day. So to wrap up, and please, if you enjoyed this video and want to see more designer content, please like the video and subscribe. It helps me out a ton. With 2K25, not only have they made improvements to what we already have, the new tools they've added are going to open up an entire new set of options for designers. I feel like we're going to go back to the glory days of course design pre-COVID, where everyone was still learning and discovering new tools and ways to do things. I think this is going to lead to more collaboration and a stronger community overall. I can't wait to see what all you designers can do. I'm looking forward to getting back into things as well and learning from all of you too. So having seen this, what is your hype level for the designer in 2K25 and the game in general? Let me know in the comments, again, as well as any other questions that I didn't get to, and I'll try my very best to answer them. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you on February 21st, where I plan to stream at midnight, and I'm going to be doing a deep dive into the designer and all the menus and everything we can do. So until then, I will see you next time.